Welcome back to Proof or Potion, the podcast where we dive into the wild world of health claims, wellness trends, and scientific studies to separate the real deal from the hype. I'm Dr. Keely.
And I'm Morgan. And together, we review the latest research and decide, is it proof, backed by science, or just a potion that's all smoke and mirrors?
Today, I am so excited because we are talking about a landmark study. This is all over the place. People have been talking about this in all types of professional circles and fitness enthusiasts alike. We are talking about creatine and hair loss.
I hear a lot about creatine, but tell me why creatine and hair loss?
Okay, creatine, there's been all of this interest in it since 2009, where there was a study that came out showing that creatine potentially increased DHT, which is an active form or a metabolite of testosterone. So testosterone converts to DHT. It was elevated in this study. And so there was this concern that elevated DHT would lead to hair loss. That study wasn't on hair loss specifically, but there was all this concern around it. Then if you can add on to that all of this anecdotal evidence and people's experiences where they are losing their hair. And so that's all over Reddit forums, fitness communities. People are just concerned over the hair loss aspect. And so this study is the first study to come out that actually looks at creatine and hair loss specifically. They looked at not only the testosterone and the DHT levels, but they also looked at the hair specifically in these human participants in this clinical study.
Like the hair follicle itself.
The hair follicle itself. So they did some imaging to look at, the hair shaft size, the density of the follicle, and the overall fullness. So
I imagine that this is kind of a big deal because everyone is using creatine for everything.
Yes.
Right? I see it for cognition. I see it for muscle development. I see it for weight maintenance or loss. I see it for what else? I know bone strength.
Yeah. Like concentration.
Yeah.
I don't know if you mentioned that one.
I mean, cognition, but
cognition in general.
Focus for sure. My husband uses it for focus.
Yep. Just literally everything under the sun.
So if all those users are having hair loss, we got problems, right?
I think what's happening is that, at least from what I've seen, it's not all users, but interestingly, there's a lot of males in their 20s and 30s who have been reporting male pattern hair loss or even like irreversible hair loss on some of these forums. And of course, everyone is saying, oh, you're just old. And, this is when that happens, but that's not, what's the deal?
What is the deal?
We need to know, and that's why we need to ask the science. So this study, first of all, the study is called Does Creatine Cause Hair Loss? A 12-week randomized controlled trial. It was published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition, and it was done by a team of researchers located in Iran, Canada, and the U.S. So it's a big group of people, big study in terms of people involved, but I think there were 38 total participants in the study. Overall, great quality study. They took all the randomization and blinding efforts very seriously and the analysis. So overall, the study itself was really well done. What they did is they took 19 participants in a placebo group and the creatine group. They gave the creatine group 5 grams of creatine per day. I should also mention they were resistance trained athletes. So these were men between 18 to 40, and they were already on a resistance workout plan.
Right.
So they told them to continue eating their same diet and doing at least 3 days a week of this resistance training while they were taking either the creatine or the placebo. The placebo was maltodextrin capsules, totally blinded, not sure which one they were getting. They took measurements at baseline where they were looking at their serum or a blood draw. They were looking at testosterone, DHT, and then the ratios of testosterone to DHT and free testosterone. So we have total testosterone, free testosterone, and then we have DHT, which is the metabolite with 5-alpha reductase, an enzyme that will convert testosterone to DHT, which has been associated with hair loss. And then they also looked at the hair. The area of the hair they looked at was on the top of the head, the vertex. Okay. So they specifically concentrated on that one area, and they did a number of different visual imaging studies to look at.
They took pictures to see how the hair changed.
They did a number of different assessments that looked at, the hair follicle thickness, the density, and the overall.
Any chemical testing at the hair level?
I'm not sure. I can't remember. They didn't find anything. Essentially, what they found is, so after taking 5 grams of creatine for 12 weeks compared to a placebo group, they found both the placebo and the creatine group increased in total testosterone. Both groups decreased in free testosterone, which was interesting.
Which is the bioavailable form.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, or the active form. There was no change at all in placebo or creatine groups in DHT levels.
Okay.
Because the free testosterone went down, there actually was an increase in DHT levels compared to free testosterone levels.
Like the ratio
between
of DHT and free testosterone goes up because DHT technically stayed the same, but free testosterone dropped. So that means that ratio goes up.
Yep, exactly. And not necessarily super relevant, but the total testosterone to DHT went down because total testosterone had gone up and DHT remained the same. So, but what was really interesting to me was that free testosterone DHT ratio, because I'm not sure why that happened. It wasn't the placebo group too, so we can't really read into that a whole lot. It was actually really interesting to me that the total testosterone went up and the free testosterone came down. They attributed it to seasonal changes. Oh, in the fall, we have no idea what was going on there. But all that to say, technically, testosterone went up, but it also went up in the placebo group, and then the DHT stayed the same in both groups.
And it's interesting how the placebo and the experimental groups really tracked. Like if one went up, the other went up.
The actual plots, if you look at the graphs, are a little different. And I actually was a little bummed because, okay, I want to break this down.
Yeah, go for it.
Now, we have a lot to talk about the way they did this study. So no one has been talking about this.
First of all, what are they saying? They're saying because of this study, creatine does not cause hair loss. We have definitively proved that DHT does not go up, and you guys are good. You're making it up. You're just getting old.
And everyone's saying this. There are a lot of people talking about this study on the internet and concluding that there's no need for concern. Hair loss is not a thing. Don't worry about it. Just take creatine. And this is now our proof of
why and how
we're not increasing DHT. And because they looked at the actual hair follicle, finally, someone looked at the hair follicle and saw no changes over time with creatine, also between the placebo and creatine. Therefore, it does not cause hair loss. All right. I have some issues with this study.
Are we calling? I'm going to preemptively call potion because I'm so excited that we have a total potion.
I don't know.
Let's talk about what's wrong with this.
First of all, the testosterone was super low in these participants. So these were 18 to 40-year-olds.
Starting testosterone.
And their starting testosterone level was an average of 288. So the actual range for testosterone might be anywhere from 300 to 1,000. But in younger populations, we should be at a healthy optimal level between 700 to 1,000. So I was a little confused by why, first of all, why are they all so low? Because that means there are people in the creatine group who are starting at a testosterone of 50 or 100.
Very low.
It's very low. But the average was 300 in both groups, which is still pretty low. And a lot of times the people who are complaining of hair loss symptoms are often men in their 20s and 30s. Why? Because they have high testosterone. And so therefore they have excess testosterone to be converted in these local sites, which we'll talk about in a second, to DHT. So you're more likely to see that almost in younger, healthier, active populations than you are in people with lower testosterone.
So if you start out much lower, your increase in testosterone is lower. Right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't look like it's increasing much, but you started out what we would call in the naturopathic world suboptimal, right? Not even it's not even suboptimal.
It's like,
right?
like you're not feeling good if you have a testosterone of 300 most of the time.
Right.
So
you're
and I'm
symptomatic, you've got things going on, right?
Yeah. I was so surprised that they even that was the average for these 18 to 40-year-olds. And there were some that were bottom of the barrel. In summary, they were low.
Not great.
Actually, they both were. They both were pretty low.
Creatine and placebo group.
Yes.
Okay, for 38 participants?
19 in each group. Yeah.
In each group.
Mm-hmm.
All of them under 500 testosterone. All of them not ideal testosterone levels to begin with.
Yes. And nobody is talking about this. I have not heard this once yet. Everyone has just been kind of agreeing with the study and saying, this is great. I would love to see a study with people who have higher, more optimal testosterone ranges. That said, their DHT was in a normal range. It was around 50, which is more in the optimal range for DHT, and it did not change. But I have to wonder if there's not more opportunity for increased DHT if your testosterone is higher. So something to think about. There was also this unique factor of the free testosterone going down, but I feel like we can't really talk about that because the placebo group was the same. But it did alter that ratio of DHT over free testosterone. And if there is a higher amount of DHT compared to free testosterone, just with that fluctuation, you could also see some effects of DHT on something like your hair. So I just wanted to point out that as my first critique of the study.
Next
what else?
critique.
They didn't measure sex hormone binding globulin, which this is a compound that basically binds to free testosterone. And so it would have been nice to know. So we have testosterone going up, we have free testosterone going down. Is our sex hormone binding globulin going up? Because that would be an indicator that it's bound to testosterone, and that's why our free is going down. It's an important marker in this whole picture to look at.
Another thing that we kind of took issue with is that the paper published the pre-study values of all of these things, of total testosterone, free testosterone, DHT, and actually creatinine as well, right?
So numbers.
They published the actual values that were taken from each of the 38 participants. They did not include the post values. All they included was the statistical analysis of the pre and post values, but there's no listing of the post values. So we can't, as research evaluators, we can't even look at the raw data. All we get is a statistical analysis. And I say this all the time. I have a big beef with statistics. This is my problem with scientific studies, is you can literally make statistics,
a lot of things,
say whatever you want to say.
And if you just look at these plots, like there's some pretty broad spectrum situations going on that are making it a little hard to look at these trend lines. And even a trend line, you can create a lot of different types of trend lines with these things. And so I'm not saying that they did it poorly either. I just want to be fair in that respect. I think overall it was a really well done study. Also, I don't know if they included it in the supplemental material, so I'll have to go back and see if they added it somewhere, because a lot of these journals now are requiring that you provide all of the raw data. So that's
it's hiding.
It might be hiding somewhere. So I want to judgy. I want to be fair and not, just hate on it. But I was reading through, it just would have been really nice to have that actual hard data back and forth, because I'd love to just see the numbers and then be able to kind of pull my own conclusions from that. And I think part of it was that the conclusion was so strong that there was nothing, then you want to go back and really pick apart the data.
Sure. If they said it's possible that it doesn't cause hair loss, we're not really sure.
Yeah.
Make your own decision.
That's some other things.
Totally different.
Couple other things. This is huge. So in this study, we're comparing creatine versus placebo, right? And we're looking at DHT levels. DHT is mostly converted in the local tissue. So you have testosterone, there's an enzyme, 5-alpha reductase, it converts it into DHT. This mostly happens at the skin, including the scalp, in the hair follicle itself, and places like the prostate and the liver to a small degree. So these sites are where you're going to have a higher concentration of DHT. In this study, we only looked at the plasma levels from a blood draw. So they draw the blood and then separate the plasma.
But that's not where you would see the DHT.
You might have higher amounts actually in the hair itself. So this is common, right? But drawing blood is one of the easiest ways to look at biomarkers.
It's pretty standard.
I mean, that's where we often start, right? Is you do a blood draw, and then if you can't find Lyme disease in the blood, you go to the cerebrospinal fluid. And same with brain chemicals, right? Most of it's in your brain. So if you're trying to draw blood, it's why you can't look at neurotransmitters easily in the blood. So there's always this question of, are we looking at the best tissue sample to find this?
Right.
And they did mention it in in all fairness, in the study, they did bring that up and say, of course, DHT levels could be higher at the hair follicle. My other big beef with this is that they looked at just the vertex of the head. So they said they only concentrated on this area of the scalp, the very tippy top, which male pattern baldness often starts in the front of the hairline here and the temple area. And they only looked at the top, and typically that occurs after. So often this is where you'll first see it. And if you read all of these Reddit forums and YouTubers, they're all complaining of it often
Losing
in the front or burning and tingling in the front.
And our own research says that actually the frontal portion of the hairline is more sensitive to DHT changes than other areas of the scalp.
It's the front, then the vertex, and then like the back and, sides.
So really any change in DHT could potentially be affecting that like frontal temporal hairline.
Yes.
And they didn't even look at that.
There's usually higher concentrations there and the receptors are more sensitive. So after all of this, right, we've got a smallish sample size. We've got the area of the head they're looking at. We've got 12 weeks, which is another thing I didn't mention. This can often take months to years.
I forgot about that.
And they were only taking 5 grams. So creatine, most people will often do a loading dose so that it can saturate the muscles and then travel other places like the brain. Not that you wouldn't see any effect, but this previous study that showed the elevated DHT, it was in 7 days during the loading phase. It went up 56% and stayed at 40% when they returned to the 5 grams after that for 2 weeks. It was still elevated by 40%. And they point out that in that original study, the DHT was still within normal serum ranges, but when the body experiences fluctuations in hormones, if you've ever had a menstrual cycle, your estrogen can technically be in range, or your progesterone for a certain phase of your cycle. But when you get a massive hormonal shift, you can experience, even if it's in range, you can have symptoms. So the fact that everyone's saying, it was still in normal range, even though it was significantly elevated, with those fluctuations, with the local situation, like if it's that much in blood, think about what it could have been in the location on site. We kind of interrupted our flow there, but small sample size. Participants started with super low testosterone. Testosterone went up in both groups, a little confusing, and the free testosterone went down. And I'm not sure what was going on there. They didn't look at sex hormone binding globulin. We didn't get the raw data for the post analysis. They were looking at the serum blood levels of DHT and not in the hair. And they only looked at the vertex region of the head instead of like the frontal area, which may have been more appropriate. And it was only 12 weeks and it was only 5 grams. So we didn't get that loading dose experience.
Or the 6-month duration, right? Because when we're seeing that hair loss is at the months to years mark of use, right?
It can be. And that's the tricky part, is that some people, you might have it right away. Some people say immediately within days. And some people say, the conversion can happen really quickly.
Sure.
So if you have increases in testosterone, that can happen within hours to days. And so technically, if you were taking a lot of it, if you were genetically sensitive to it, all of these things are really important. And I think just based on all the things we've discussed, I might have to call potion on this one.
Yeah.
Is it our first potion?
It's our first full official potion. So, but it's kind of backwards, right? We're not saying creatine doesn't do all the amazing things it is touted to do.
Totally. I actually love it.
Just saying
for the record.
This particular study, which now I'm sure is going to be...
It's already become a keynote study. It's been everywhere. So many professionals saying this is great news. I've always been recommending it. I wanted to be super objective about it. And I'm reading hundreds of other stories. I've had this personal experience, and these forums are fascinating because people are so opinionated one way or the other. And ultimately, we just need a lot more research. There isn't
it always
enough
comes back
to say one way or another here.
One study is never enough.
Yeah. And I think this contributes to the data to say, if you take 19 men, 18 to 40 with low testosterone and give them 5 grams for...
They're probably not going to have hair loss.
They probably won't have hair loss in the top of their head by 12 weeks. So that is some type of conclusion.
For what they're saying, they are making probably a correct conclusion, right? But to say, again, say
take this and it's not going to happen.
We're going full potion on this.
This doesn't even necessarily feel fair to call it potion. I think the conclusion that it's not going to cause hair loss in anybody because of this one study, that is the potion part here. Yeah. What do you think? Have you taken creatine? Has this happened to you?
Have you had your experience with hair loss?
Let us know, especially if you're female. I'm very curious to hear from the other women if this has happened to you at all. Yeah. Let us know what you think.
Yes.
Thanks so much for tuning in for this exciting episode.
Like, subscribe, comment. We love to hear from you all. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.